4 minutes late today. Morning number 1843. This is Morsels of a Thought by Ying Yang. I am in California, and good day, everybody. I hope everybody has a good day, whether you're in China or in England or in the USA. I am going to read from People Who Are Wise, Larry J. Namer, who knows the right thing to do for himself. And knowing the right thing to do for yourself is a form of wisdom. Taking the action being magic, is creating virtue. So this gentleman created virtue for himself and for many other people. Larry J. Namer is a co-founder of E Entertainment, where we got the Kardashians from. And anyway, I am ready to go swimming. I am ready to go swimming. I am ready to go swimming. I, you know the story. Okay, so first we're going to go into Larry J. Namer's 2 recipes. Chinese style spare ribs up above, and New York style shrimp egg rolls down below. After I read the recipes, I will take down these photos and I will read what he wrote in his book. Okay, so Chinese style spare ribs. Okay, so bookmark. There we go. He says, I learned this one working in the kitchen of the House of King, an old school Chinese restaurant in Brooklyn. Ingredients: 1 rack of St. Louis style cut ribs divided into 2 even pieces, a 1/4 cup of soy sauce, a 1/4 cup of hoisin sauce. Just about every market has this now. 1/4 cup pineapple or orange juice, 1 teaspoon of Chinese 5-spice powder, a pinch of white pepper, a pinch of garlic salt, a 1/4 cup of brown sugar, 2 tablespoons of honey, 1 tablespoon of sesame oil, and 1 tablespoon of red food coloring. Mix all the ingredients together and add to a gallon-size freezer bag. Add the 2 pieces of ribs. Marinate at least 4 hours. Preheat oven to 400 degrees. When up to temp, place ribs on the middle rack of the oven and roast for 35 minutes. Remove and let cool for 5 minutes. Slice into individual ribs and plate. Serve with Coleman's English mustard and Gold's duck sauce. That's cool. That's cool. That was this one right here. So we know this recipe now. Chinese style. I will show you, and I'll show you again later. So, and then we have New York style shrimp egg rolls. He says, cooking became therapeutic for me throughout the years. Here is a little, quote, therapy, end quote, from my years with Manhattan Cable, a favorite, shrimp egg rolls. Make sure this recipe is not that long. It's not that long. The ingredients are 1 package of egg roll wrappers. Most supermarkets have these now. Anyway, 1/2 pound cooked medium shrimp, each cut into 4 pieces. A 1/4 head of Napa cabbage. 1 stalk celery cut into very small pieces. Now, a stalk is the entire stalk. It has all the ribs, so that's as much. Don't just do 1 rib. Do an entire stalk. Stalk. Okay. Not the kind that people do. Ugh. 1 handful of chopped bean sprouts, fresh, not canned. 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. 2 tablespoons of light soy sauce. 1 egg whisked. For cooking, 4 cups of vegetable oil. Note, for this recipe, buy the egg roll wrappers as they are as good, if not better, than any you could make at home. Then you should watch a YouTube video on how to assemble the egg rolls, as there is simply no way it will work if I tell you how in writing. Mix all the filling ingredients together in a bowl. Lay out an egg roll wrapper and place 2 heaping spoonsful of the filling near the middle, but a drop more to the part closest to you. Roll as you learned from the video. Dip your fingers into the whisked egg and seal. Then place another wrapper down and roll and seal. Having 2 wrappers is the key to getting crispy egg rolls. To cook, heat the oil and toss in a piece of leftover egg roll wrapper to make sure the oil is hot enough to fry them. Otherwise, it will soak up the oil and you'd be eating and biting into oil. Ugh. Cook each egg roll until light brown, then remove and dry on a paper towel. When they are all halfway cooked, cook them in the hot oil until they are a nice golden brown. Remove and place on paper towels. Then cut each in half and place on a serving plate. Frying them twice is what gives them the absolute crispness. Serve with some homemade English mustard, make it from powder, and let stand at least 10 minutes. I use Coleman's. Also, serve with store-bought duck sauce for dipping. Ooh, yum, duck sauce. So we are reading from Off Script, Never Follow the Crowd, Recipes for Success by Larry J. Namer. Larry J. Namer, yay, yay, yay. We know him. He's a great guy. He had to evacuate for the LA fires. He had to evacuate his house last year or 2 years ago. 2024, I think. Gosh. 3 months became 2. We are now reading from his story off script. We are doing morsels of thought of wisdom because I myself am not very wise. I'm simply reading to you what other people's life experiences are so we can what's the word for it? We can slough off some of the knowledge and bring it to ourselves. When they give us a synopsis of what was successful for them in their lives, they have imparted some wisdom to us and educated us. So now we are reading from them. I'm simply reading to you what other people say. 3 months became 2, and then it drained down to 1 short month, and something unexpected happened. Someone on their legal team must have woken up, realized that they'd invested a lot in a lot of marketing and promotion for their so-called FXTV, but they didn't own the name. And while that did spell FX, which was similar to Fox, minus the O, it also spelled potential trouble and headaches down the road. In order to make it all right and fast, they filed a lawsuit against us. Weeks away from launching a major television channel, they couldn't let leave anything to chance. Armed with a team of high-profile lawyers, they had their day in court, ready to claim what was rightfully ours. Now, Alan and I didn't have an entire law firm on retainer. We did, however, have one lawyer, and it just so happened that he wasn't very expensive or very good. We looked at him and said, "Listen, when you go in there, don't argue with them. Don't plead our case. Don't object or anything." Handing him a letter, we continued, "Just put this in your pocket. If the judge asks you if you have anything to say, give him this letter. That's all you've got to do." And that's exactly what he did. When the lawyers from Fox were done arguing their case, the judge asked our attorney if he had any evidence he wanted to present, and our attorney responded by pulling out the letter and handing it to the judge. After reading the letter, the judge actually laughed out loud. The letter just so happened to be from the chairman of Fox. Like I said previously, it was friendly, but there was something even more significant about this letter, for it was our entire case in defense of the accusations. Hey, Larry, it was great to see you. Good luck with FX TV. With that, the judge turned to Fox's lawyers and pointed out that the chairman of their company didn't have any problem with us using the name FX. Therefore, he suggested that the lawyers step out and try to negotiate a deal. In the end, Fox ended up paying us money to give up the FX name, which was pretty sweet, considering the fact that we were already convinced we weren't going to proceed with the channel. Who knows? If they'd played nice and asked us kindly in the first place, we might have given them the name for free. But hey, it put a few dollars in our pocket and some much needed confidence in our attorney. I'd say that was a win-win for everyone. Well, except for Fox. That's pretty good. uh, Next page. Chapter 8. E! Exclamation point. A plan that somehow unfolded. Uh, I could take it off, but I don't know. What do you think? Naturally, the making of E was complicated, so much that the process deserves a chapter of its own in this book. Alan and I came up with the idea for Entertainment Tonight 24 hours a day, or MTV of the movies. We wrote a plan and were naive enough to think that just because this all made sense to us, the money would follow. Unfortunately, it didn't work that way. Everyone told us it was a good idea, but they also pointed out that we weren't Time Incorporated or a big studio, and regular people don't just start TV networks. That's for the big media companies. Lucky for us, I guess, we weren't smart enough to listen, so we didn't give up and just kept pushing along. It was a very interesting journey, one that entailed over 100 pitch sessions, and they were all pretty much the same. There were some who thought the idea wasn't very good and would say things like, "Do you really think people care about all this Hollywood stuff?" Then there was the majority who said, "Nice idea, but you aren't Rupert Murdoch." This is a good time to share some of the more interesting stories on our quest to get our first dollars. Let me begin by saying that Alan had a few little quirks, and one was extreme anxiety attacks. When we were flying to New York from LA for a big meeting, we got on the plane and placed our bags in the overhead bins. The flight attendant came by and we said hello, and she moved on to the next row. Just a minute or two before the doors would close, Alan had an attack. He said, "I'm freaking out. I can't stay on the plane," and got up and ran off before they closed the doors. We taxied out to the runway, and the same flight attendant came by and asked where my friend was. I explained he got off the plane abruptly, at which point she went into a panic and ran to the cockpit. They turned the plane around and went back to the gate. I was immediately surrounded by the pilot, the flight attendant, and half a dozen security folks who ran onto the plane when we got to the gate. They grilled me as to who my friend was, how long I knew him, and asked if he left anything on the plane. I got a lot of very angry looks from the other passengers who naturally assumed I was the cause of the flight delay. After satisfying the security folks that there was no danger and explaining that it was all due to Alan's panic attack, the plane departed. The dirty looks, well, they continued for the rest of the flight. I later found out that Alan tried to catch the next flight out, only to be told the pilot notified the airline and Alan was banned for about a year from this airline. I, on the other hand, made it to NYC, New York City, and conducted the meeting myself. Alan was on another airline sometime after that, making small talk with a guy who sat next to him. Alan told him about our network idea, and the guy said it that it was brilliant and asked when we were starting the network. Alan explained that we had no money, and the guy said that he was in charge of acquisitions and divestitures for Warner Communication. And while this wasn't something for them, he knew some folks he thought would be interested. When Alan told me about this encounter, I met him in New York City, and we had a meeting with a bond house on Wall Street that had just started an investment banking division. They were looking for deals, and while this wasn't a thing they generally looked at, they agreed to meet with us. We met with Jeffrey Pollack, who was the newly made head of investment banking. After seeing a few posters on his wall, he explained that he was the entertainment reporter for his college newspaper and thought that the upside to what we were doing was huge. He agreed to invest $2.5 million and we took it. After all, we had been beating the bushes for 3 years. At this point, we'd take anything we could get. This is by Larry J. Namer. Off script. Never follow the crowd. Recipes for Success. We have just read two recipes, including these these delicious looking spring rolls, New York style. And we're back to the book. The bond company was Maybon Nugent, and Jeffrey Pollock assigned one of his folks to be the lead on our project. They wanted to get a few small contributors who could provide not just money, but strategic value to join in with them. Frank E. Barnes, known as Chip, was on the case, and he set up a bunch of meetings with funds who might be inclined to do a deal like ours. One of the first meetings was with the family office of a famous American family. The office was in New York City, and for some reason, Ellen was not able to make that meeting, so I took it with Chip. We sat in the conference room and waited 45 minutes for the managing director before he walked in carrying a business plan. In those days, business plans were lengthy printed documents, and ours was about 200 pages with the financials. The first words out of his mouth were, "Who had the nerve to send me this piece of garbage?" And he just missed my head as he flung the plan across the room. Being a street kid from Coney Island, I was not about to take that treatment, especially since I was sure he wasn't going to be an investor. So I went right back at him with a verbal attack and argument that lasted for about 15 minutes. When we were done, to my surprise, he got up from his chair, looked at Chip, and said, "I'm in. Call me later to finalize this." Then he walked out of the room without so much as a goodbye or a handshake. To this day, I'm not sure what happened to turn him around. Eventually, Mabin got a group of investors to join them, and $2.5 million was on its way. Among the group were H.C. Crown Corp., the Hallmark family, Hutton Small Cap Fund, Sidney Knaffel, and Michael Wilner, who ran some East Coast cable system operations. This group eventually exited when we brought in several major cable companies in the next funding round. Interesting. Eventually exited. The bloody butt that almost derailed a network. That's chapter 9. The search for partners continued as Maven was a little reluctant to go it alone. They had a few other small cap funds that expressed some interest and told us that one of them was serious but wanted to meet us at one of the national cable conventions in Texas. They said this was a very serious group and we needed to be very buttoned up and professional. We being me, Alan, and Bruce, who was a partner at the time. Bruce was formerly with Showtime and was the person who connected me with Alan. Wanting everything to be perfect for the 9 o'clock a.m. meeting, we ordered just about everything on the menu from room service: bagels, toast, muffins, bacon, sausage, coffee, tea, and hot chocolate, and asked for everything to be brought to the room at 8:30 on the dot. Everything was perfect except the fifth beetle, as we called Bruce, had a white powder problem, and unknown to us, he had a rough night out with his cable buddies. Alan and I went into the bedroom to discuss how we were going to present our case and what we would say about our partner, who we thought was asleep. But when we came out, he was awake and had already hit the room service table and tasted everything. He literally took a bite out of everything on the table, and the crumbs were all over the place, including his face. To top it off, he spilled the coffee. Our plan was ruined. We moved the table into the hall and placed another order. The meeting time was drawing near, and we were scrambling when we noticed the fifth beetle was planning on staying for the meeting. Then we noticed that we had yet another problem. The back of his pants were soaked with blood from a hemorrhoid that had burst. Alan and I were in shock and were trying to push him into his bedroom when the doorbell rang. With no other choice, we made our partner sit on the couch and told him not to move or talk. We had just started the pitch when Bruce decided it was time for more coffee and got up. In an attempt to distract the potential investor, I danced over to the other side of the room, hoping his eyes would follow. Luckily, they did, but then Bruce started wandering around the room. For every move he made, I countered and went to another side of the room so the investor wouldn't see the blood-stained pants. Finally, Bruce sat down again, but when I looked over at the couch, it too was soaked with blood. Again, I danced around, hoping the investor's eyes would follow me. It was so crazy that he must have thought I was the one on drugs. Somehow, we ended up managing to finish our pitch, and when the investor got up to leave, he said, "Okay, I get it. I'm in." A little about Bruce. He was known as the Fifth Beatle after he told us that our idea for a network was stupid and suggested we should take it down a notch and think about doing a TV show instead. He told us we could buy him out for 12K, and Alan did just that. After we launched, Bruce sued us, saying we should have convinced him this would be successful so he wouldn't sell. It was laughable. Even the judge laughed when he dismissed the case and placed a $1 million bond requirement if he ever chose to pursue the lawsuit again. Ooh. Back to the convention. Our young assistant Lisa was also there. Lisa was a wild 19-year-old, and Alan and I always marveled at her very open discussions about what she did the night before and who she slept with. Unfortunately, she partied a bit too hard and overdosed and died at the young age of 19. It was a world that Alan and I were naive to, but one which opened our eyes quickly. Sadly, we saw more than a few bright lives were impacted by drugs and the party atmosphere. Thankfully, we weren't sucked into that scene, although we lost an assistant and a partner, and there is a hotel out there that lost a couch. Okay, now, chapter 10 begins the OJ stories. He says, "You probably recognize some of the names of the athletes who we partnered with when we were working on FX TV. There was Kareem, Bruce Jenner, and I think it's safe to say that just about everybody has heard of OJ Simpson. Well, here's the story about how we met and my take on one of the biggest questions of the 90s. Did OJ get away with murder?" Okay, we're going to end on that note, even though it's a little funky, because we're going to read this next week. We are reading the Recipes for Success. This is a beautiful book. Okay, Old Kinderhook. I say Old Kinderhook because Old Kinderhook was James Monroe, the, I think, eighth or fifth president of the United States. He was from Kinderhook, New York, and he was always trying to do things with virtue. And I'm trying to do things with virtue. I'm simply reading to you what wise people say about what they have done that was wise for their lives. And for us, we learn similar things to do for our own wisdom. And once we do them, we wind up spreading virtue. Okay? Yay! Okay, Old Kinderhook, my going to a swim. Swim, 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 Old Kinderhook.